It will interest you to know why Afro-Barbadians have deep West African roots. This video will cover the full story. Please subscribe to this channel for more on African history in diaspora.
What if I told you that beneath the modern identity of Barbados lies a powerful African story, one written not only in history books, but also in DNA? Barbados is famous for its beaches, music, cricket, and Caribbean culture. But there is another story that deserves attention. Why does so much of the ancestry of Black Barbadians trace back to West Africa? The answer takes us back hundreds of years, to the era of the Atlantic slave trade. Long before Barbados became a British colony, the island was home to indigenous Caribbean peoples. But from the 1600s, Barbados was transformed by European colonization and the development of sugar plantations. Sugar became enormously profitable, and the plantations required a massive labor force. Europeans increasingly turned to the transatlantic slave trade, bringing Africans to Barbados under brutal and coercive conditions. Thousands upon thousands of Africans were forcibly transported across the Atlantic, and this is where the African DNA story begins. So, where exactly did the ancestors of Afro-Barbadians come from? Historical and genetic research points overwhelmingly toward West Africa and West Central Africa. People were taken from regions corresponding to parts of modern-day Nigeria, Ghana, Benin, Togo, Sierra Leone, Liberia, Guinea, Senegal and surrounding areas, as well as Central Africa. They belonged to different peoples and spoke different languages. They were not one single African tribe. They included people from diverse cultural backgrounds who were violently brought together in Barbados. And over generations, their descendants created something new, a distinctly Barbadian culture with deep African roots. This is where the story becomes fascinating. Genetic studies of Barbadian populations have found an exceptionally strong West African ancestry component. One widely cited study of Afro-Barbadian individuals estimated approximately 90% West African ancestry, although the exact percentage varies depending on the population sampled and the genetic method used. That doesn't mean every Barbadian has the same DNA, and it doesn't mean DNA can tell us exactly which village or ethnic group every ancestor came from, but it provides powerful evidence supporting what historical records already tell us. There is an important historical reason. Barbados developed one of the Caribbean's most intensive plantation economies. Sugar production was extremely demanding. As the plantation system expanded, the enslaved African population grew dramatically. By the 18th century, Africans and their descendants vastly outnumbered Europeans on the island, and because the system was sustained for generations, African ancestry became deeply embedded in the population. But there is another important point. After the abolition of slavery in the British Empire in the 1830s, the African-descended population did not disappear. DNA is only part of the story. Listen carefully to Barbadian culture, and you can hear echoes of Africa. Food traditions, music, dance, folklore, religious practices, community structures, language patterns, and especially the importance of family and community. These traditions were transformed over centuries, influenced by Europe and other parts of the Caribbean, but African cultural memory survived. That is one of the remarkable stories of the African diaspora. People were taken from Africa, but Africa did not completely disappear from them. And here's something particularly interesting for African viewers. Some genetic and historical research has identified ancestry connections between Afro-Caribbean populations and regions of present-day Nigeria and Ghana, among other parts of West Africa. But we should be careful. DNA ancestry does not mean that every Afro-Barbadian can simply say, "I am Nigerian" or "I am Ghanaian." Modern national identities like Nigeria and Ghana did not exist in the same form during the height of the slave trade. Their ancestors belonged to many different African societies. So the more accurate question isn't, are Barbadians Nigerian? The better question is, which African populations contributed to the ancestry of modern Barbadians? And the answer is remarkably diverse. The Barbadian story is ultimately bigger than DNA. It is a story about displacement, survival, and identity. Millions of Africans were forcibly transported across the Atlantic. Their descendants eventually created new communities throughout the Caribbean and the Americas. Today, Barbados is an independent nation, and its people have created an identity that is uniquely Barbadian. But beneath that identity lies a powerful ancestral connection to Africa. So, why do Barbadians have so much West African DNA? Because for centuries, Barbados was at the heart of a plantation economy sustained by the forced transportation of Africans across the Atlantic. Those Africans came from many different societies across West and West Central Africa. Their descendants survived slavery, built families, preserved elements of their culture, and helped create modern Barbados. And today, their African ancestry can still be detected in their DNA. Africa was taken across the Atlantic, but Africa survived. And perhaps the most fascinating question is not simply, where did Barbadians come from? It is, how much of Africa can still be found in the Caribbean today? If you want to explore that question, subscribe, because the African story didn't end when people left the continent, it traveled with them.